Hey, what's good? My name is Rich Jones, and I'm the host of the Mental Wealth Show here on the Find More Balance Network. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the Mental Wealth Show podcast, it is a twice-a-month show that lives at the intersection of mental health and high performance. And it's episodes with just me talking about my mental health and healing journey, what I'm learning along the way, or I'm catching up with a guest on their origin story and how they ultimately got to where they are today. So I was super excited for this episode that you're about to hear and see, my conversation with Marques Colston. And if you're not familiar, Marques is a 2009 Super Bowl champion, a man that's caught many a touchdown pass from Drew Brees. And if you're unfamiliar, he is a former NFL wide receiver. He's both in the Louisiana Sports and New Orleans Saints Halls of Fame. And we talk a little bit about football in this conversation, but this is really about creating space, or as you'll hear him say, creating separation. And you don't need to understand sports to understand the importance of mindset. And that's really what we're talking about for the bulk of this conversation here today. So here's my conversation with Marques Colston, 2009 Super Bowl champion, and I hope you enjoy.
Man, mental wealth is everything. It's the foundation. It's the thing that, as things are going well, it's the thing that allows you to enjoy them in the moment. As things are not going as well as you want them to, it's the thing that allows you to persevere and be resilient through it. So to me, mental wealth is really that foundation that allows you to be who you need to be, where you need to be, in the moment that you need to be it.
I love that. Now, for me, I think about it as also consisting of the practices and the habits that you build as well. And when we talk about performance, and particularly someone like yourself who has played at a high level, what, I guess, habits or practices have you found most helpful to get yourself in the right mindset to live authentically and to do the work that you want to do?
Yeah, I think for me, it's kind of evolved over time, right? When I was playing, a lot of my preparation started as a young player around just a more physical preparation. But as you get older and as your physical traits and abilities start to leave you, you start to lean more and more on the mental aspects of the game. And I think just being able to go through that has really positioned me in this next chapter of my life to really lead with that mental preparation. And just really be able to establish habits and establish, parts of my daily routine that really allow me to kind of set the day and get aligned before I start. And that mental, just those mental habits and that daily routine, it kind of allows me to use each morning as a launch pad to get what I need to get accomplished in that day.
Now, is your daily routine as strict as you follow the same sequence of things every morning?
No, man. No, it's so what I've done at this point is I kind of have this framework, right? Because I'm married, I have 2 kids, I got to make sure they get up, get moving, get breakfast, and get out the door. So what I do is I try to make sure that I work out 4 days a week, and I kind of give myself a 6-day window to get 4 workouts in, right? So I know what I want to get accomplished, but I kind of bake in a little bit of flexibility to make sure that I can still be in the moment and, life doesn't get in the way. To me, that flexibility is important just because it kind of bakes in the ability to give yourself grace when things pop up and just really be flexible as things move.
That idea of giving yourself grace is so important because for many years, and in still some ways now, I do the perfectionist thing, and I've had these situations where you start beating yourself up like, I said I was going to go to the gym today and I didn't. Mm-hmm. Or you're eating healthy and you make one mistake, you have one meal and you're like, I messed up, F it, I might as well throw the whole diet out the window. Where it's actually about the habits and it's actually about what you do over time, not just that one particular day.
I couldn't have said it any better, man. It gets you in this place where you're constantly trying to restart, right? One bad day, it's like, let me scrap this week, I'll start again next week. And 3-4 weeks later, you still haven't done it consistently. And I think that's just a habit of, I think that's just a function of growth and realizing that, the end goals have to encompass everything that you have to go through to get to the end goals, right? So, yeah, I mean, just being able to be flexible, because none of us really know what that day has to offer. We can plan all we want, but, there's an element of letting go of control And in order to let go of control, you got to be able to find those controls and find those ways to kind of bake in flexibility.
Now, when did you realize you had to let go of control? Because that's not easy for a lot of us.
You know what? I think a lot of it's a function of the position I played when I played football. I always talk about playing wide receiver while, it's one of the most visible positions on the field. There's a lot of perceptions that come along with that, but really it's the most dependent position on the field that you can play, right? I can go out and run a route, get open and do everything that I'm supposed to do. But if the lineman doesn't, pick up a blitz, the quarterback doesn't make the right read, the other complementary routes don't do what they're supposed to do, it makes no difference. I still can't produce, right? So I think just playing that position and that combination of making sure that I handle everything that I can handle, but also knowing that I'm kind of at the mercy of everyone else doing their job, kind of planted that seed. And I've just tried to, kind of take that and evolve it into other areas of my life.
Now let's talk a moment about transitions. Something you said maybe triggered this. I don't know what it was, but there's the transition from high school to college, then college to the NFL, and now the transition where you go from professional sports to this chapter. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the transition from college to the NFL and how you had to think about the way that you stepped your game up, because I'm a spectator, like millions of us, and I see it. It's like, oh, it's so much harder, it's so much faster, but I know there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, I mean that transition is one that it's a true transition. It's kind of a you have to get acclimated to the new environment, right? I think we all, right, wrong, and different. We all kind of mold into the environment that we're in, right? And in college, there's a lot of things that you can do to kind of get by on athleticism and just sheer athletic ability that just doesn't fly at the next level. And I think that was the biggest transition. It's more mental than anything. I think physically, you're not there if you don't have the physical ability to play. The biggest transition is that mental aspect of saying, all right, I'm no longer just head and shoulders above everyone athletically. Like, we're all on this equal playing field. And my competitive advantage is the way that I prepare. My competitive advantage is, my ability to make, quick decisions at high probabilities. The competitive advantage shifts, and the quicker that you realize that all of your preparation and all of the way that, you can put yourself in position to make the plays when they present themselves, the faster you realize that, the easier the transition becomes, because there is no more just leaning on, all right, I'm 6'4", 225, and I run a 4.5. Like, everybody does that.
It's still wild for me to hear that, because even at the D1 level, like top D1, like these are still very elite athletes who in any other context, they would be the best of the best.
Yeah.
So I'm always like, how much different can it be? But when you talk about that mental aspect, like there's stuff that you just don't know unless you've had the experience, and you don't get the experience without time, right?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of what you see with like the veteran and the seasoned players is they have enough experience, they have enough reps, they've seen every iteration of what can happen, right? So they get themselves to a place where, similar to like building a habit, if you intentionally, work on a habit long enough, it starts to automate, right? And I think a lot of the veterans, they kind of get themselves mentally to that place to where I don't have to think about every single thing as it's happening around me. Like, I see this thing and it triggers, all right, I know that the defense is going to, look to take this away. So I think more than anything else, what it allows you to do is, get to like the right options and the right decisions. And it takes a lot of the thinking and a lot of the thought process out of it, and you can just react. And, I think as a young player, you just don't have enough repetition to know what you don't know. And with more reps, it allows you to do the same thing. You start to trim the fat on decisions. And really, that's the best players are the ones that are able to react in the moment, make the right decisions at a high probability. And, from there, the athleticism takes over. And I think that's the mental part of the game that a lot of people don't understand, is like everything that happens, pre-play, pre-snap, every decision that's made in the moment, That's really the competitive edge.
Man, that's the mental part of the game of life, what you just described,
Yep,
because
no doubt.
football happens to be the context we're talking about right now, but it is no different than corporate America. Probably some of your boys, some of the things that they're talking about, same type of
Hmm.
stuff. You got to get reps, and some things become second nature to where you don't have to think about it.
Yep.
But everyone started at that same spot, and sometimes it can appear that someone is so much further ahead and they have it all together, but
Hmm.
like we all started there and we all had to take that time, and there's no shortcut around doing the work.
No, there is no shortcut, and if there is, it's not going to lead you to the place you want to go. And I think what you just hit on, that realization is what really has kind of put me in position to transition from the game in a way that I can take a lot of the lived experiences that look different on the surface, but I think fundamentally the decision making processes, the preparation, everything that you just talked about, it's just finding a way to kind of reskin those experiences into whatever the next chapter is. And there's been a lot of chapters.
Yeah, there have. I was looking at wiki. It's so cool when I get to go to like this person's got a wiki page. It's like a detailed wiki page, not the wiki page that just their PR person got made for them with like 2 lines. Like this is like a detailed page, and even your LinkedIn too. And I'm thinking, yeah, you've been an NFL player, but you've always had your hands in other stuff. Ownership. So the entrepreneurial. It seems like that entrepreneurial gene has always been there. Is that true?
Yeah, it's always kind of been deep rooted, and I think about it like this. I mean, coming from Hofstra, I was exactly what a startup is, right? It's this thing that doesn't really have a high probability of success, but with the right preparation, the right opportunities, and just being able to capitalize, you can just kind of keep putting yourself in position. So I've kind of always thought about my journey, through an entrepreneurial lens, and it's that journey post football has just kind of carried that on, and I think the journey going through kind of the road less traveled has kind of prepared me to step into some of these situations where I'm probably going to be the only person in the room that looks like me. More than likely, going to be the only person in the room that has my experience. And when you're in those silos, and kind of in those rooms where you just don't feel a lot of familiarity, you got to lean on what's inside to kind of get you through, and you trust yourself, you trust your process, you trust your vision, and at some point you hope it takes you in the right direction.
Now we were talking a little bit about the transition from college to pros. Now let's talk about, and you started to get into this, the transition from pros to this world where a lot of that other mental stuff is coming in a different context.
Hmm.
Also, the idea of going into rooms and being the only one again. Is
Hmm.
that, and I guess because you didn't have this experience possibly, but I'm thinking about when you've been an athlete, you're notable, people know your name, people would assume that that would then make things easier
Hmm.
at the next step, and easier being a subjective word. Has it actually been easier, do you think?
It's That's a complex yes. There's parts of that make it easier. It's clearly easier to open doors and make connections at a high level. So the access is there. The challenge becomes the perception and the perceived value, right? So when you're leaving a world where most people see you from a purely entertainment standpoint, right? They turned on the TV on Sunday, they drafted you in fantasy football. Like at that point, you're there for their entertainment, right? And that's where it becomes complicated because you have access, but who are you coming in the door as? Are you coming in as the business person? Are you coming in as the individual, the human being? Or are you coming in as the professional football player? And that's where it gets a little more interesting because I've been in a lot of different rooms over the years to where I'm walking in with one vision and one objective in mind, and I'm received in a way that people just want to talk about fantasy football and they want to talk about all of the things from an entertainment standpoint, and it gets you to this place where you have to start thinking about, like, can I change minds? Can I change perceptions? How much work is it going to take to change those perceptions? And is the result of that work, is it going to be worth it? Right. That's where it gets a little bit more complex, trying to navigate, those three different areas of your life.
How do you determine if it's worth it? I know that could be a really broad question, but how do you determine if it's worth it for you?
There is no hard, fast rule. I think it kind of gets back to reps, right? You get into enough of these situations and you start to see clues. And, over the years, I've kind of seen some patterns form. And, I think at this point in the journey, there's certain triggers, right? There's certain triggers and you try to give everybody grace. But at some point, the second reference to fantasy football in a business meeting, it's like, all right, yeah, this is going nowhere fast.
Yeah. Okay. Got you. I appreciate you giving that example.
Yeah.
Now, creating separation, I love that you have this concept because something else just occurred to me as I was thinking about it. I know we're gonna talk about what that is. I was thinking about creating separation on the field as a wide receiver, creating separation from, I'm sure that's probably part of it, but then also creating separation even to give yourself space to think and process is something else that came to mind. But talk about this concept of creating separation as you've created it.
Yeah, man, it's one of those double entendres, right? My job as a wide receiver, it was literally my job is to create separation, and that means, create enough distance between you and the defender so that you can make a play. And, if you watch the game, you follow the game, you start to look at, everybody kind of does it in a different way. The end result can be the same, but me as a bigger receiver, I might not get as much physical distance between me and the defender, but I've got long arms and I can jump, so I'm still open, even if I'm not open, right? The smaller receivers, they're gonna use more athleticism, more agility, and they're gonna create maybe more opportunity, more space between them and the defender. But ultimately, it's how can you leverage what's unique about you? How can you take your strengths, amplify those, your weaknesses, kind of minimize those, to put yourself in position to make plays, right? And that's what I did for 10 years, at the highest level. And again, in that transition off the field into the boardroom, into wherever it was going to be, again, just kind of running up against, this baked in persona that people thought that I should be. It automatically kind of came to mind that I need to figure out a way to create separation, not just from that persona, and figure out a way to establish my value in a different way that really aligns with who I am and what I want to do and really where I want to go. But also, like as a business person, you got to be able to create separation and differentiate your business model, or differentiate your services and products. So to me, this concept of creating separation is one that's germane to me, just from my background and my experience. But I think it's really something that's universal in that we all have these unique abilities, these unique traits, might be unique opportunities. And the goal is always to take what's unique about us and really lead with that in a way that creates an advantage, a competitive advantage that allows you to go out and win in whatever it is that you're doing.
I love that. Man, you made me think of, and people who've listened to the podcast have heard me probably talk about this ad nauseum, but I had taken a mental health leave from my day job last year. And at the point that I had taken that leave, I was having panic attacks, and I'd just been in this cycle of constantly looking for something new and still not being happy. And it wasn't until I took that leave that, one, I learned about the complex PTSD and was able to start that healing journey. And I realized that, like, it had nothing to do with my job. I was thinking about leaving my day job altogether. I'm like, it had nothing to do with that. It was like this work I needed to do on myself that then opened the door for me to say, you know what, like, here's actually what I need to be doing, and so like, when I hear creating space, I just think about, again, all the applications, but also how doing that can not just position you to put distance from a past persona or the way that you were before, but it can open doors.
No, I think you're spot on. The biggest piece of what it means to create separation is really being honest and candid with yourself first, right? You got to understand which version of you is showing up today. And, I think part of it is figuring out if today's version of me is not the optimal version, then what can I do to kind of get myself to that optimal place, first and foremost, but then even how can I continue to progress even in a suboptimal, position, right? So I think it's really this dynamic, it's really this dynamic, thought process and this dynamic methodology that really it has to start with you, and it has to start with your uniqueness. And really your uniqueness is it can be your talents, it can be your traits, but a lot of times it's going to be in that moment realizing who you are, who you need to be, how do you bridge that gap, and figuring out what are the different strategies and tools that can help me bridge that gap.
Now, I'm gonna give you a classic scenario, and this scenario may or may not have been me, but let's say brother, 38, 39 years old, in a good spot in his career. As far as the world around him, everyone thinks he's doing well, successful, has a family. I guess that's not me yet. And to them, to this person, they don't feel, they're like, man, like I thought I would be so much further ahead than I am right now. Like I'm not living the life that I want. And I think a lot of us, as we're getting closer to 40, we are having that realization.
Yeah.
So if someone is in that spot, where do you advise that they start?
I would definitely start. I always like to start with the end in mind, right? And if you are kind of traveling a path that you don't think is leading you where you want to go, I think the first step is to really establish with as much clarity as possible, like what is that destination? Because it's really difficult, especially in the noise that we live in, right? There's always a new distraction. There's always a new task that needs to be. There's always a new crisis or new priority that kind of rules the day. So to me, being able to establish that North Star and really kind of have that be the thing that the path there might not be direct. You might have to take a bunch of detours. You might be operating like in the Waze app, right? You might get rerouted a couple times. But no, I mean, I think the clearer you can see that destination, the better you can map the path there. But traveling to kind of this pseudo unknown place, like if you get there, you might not even know you're there.
I love that. Also, that you said basically life is not linear. And I think a lot of us who do the more traditional career routes, we're like, I'm going to be this, and I'm going to be this, and I'm going to be this. And it's like, no, you may think you want it to be that. Like there's so many people who have said, oh, this thing, that would be my dream job. And they get that job and they're like, this is a nightmare. That's not a dream at all. And that's part of the journey, is that you're going to try different things. I think it's applicable in sports. As you age, there are things that evolve about your game. I'm thinking for self being, I'm not as fast or, as strong as I was at 21. So, I got to rely on like core strength, and I got to rely on flexibility and things that I didn't have as much of when I was younger, because like now those things are more important. So it's a constantly evolving game.
No, and I think you raise a really good point. Like we see the end game, especially when we're younger, we kind of see what the lifestyle is that we want to lead. And, we see it on the surface, but we don't see everything that's kind of bubbling under the surface. We don't see, the journey that it might have taken to get there. You might see the job that you want. You might see the salary, the lifestyle it can provide, but you might not see the mental stress that comes along with it, the uncertainty. So I think that there's always, things that are brewing under the hood that we just don't have access to. We don't have those experiences. And, I think, trying to imagine that North Star and trying to visualize that North Star, I try to work through like 5 different lenses, because that's really what life is. Life is you kind of operating on a spiritual plane, right? Which everyone has kind of their core values. Everyone has their beliefs. And the more that you can lead with those things, the more aligned your life is going to be. We're all operating from like the personal development lens, which is, how do we improve ourselves, whether it's health and wellness, whether it's, education, whatever it might be, to continue to improve and, put ourselves in position to be the best version of ourselves. There's the professional lens, which, if you have a, job aspiration, you've got to, kind of continually train and, learn the knowledge base and all of those things to get you there. There's the social aspect, which you need the relationships that at some point you want to mentor others. You need others to mentor you. You need that, accountability in that peer group. And then the last one, the financial, is kind of the culmination of all those things, right? We're all seeking financial steadiness and stability, right? And I think the more that we can kind of visualize that North Star through those 5 lenses, we're not going to be able to get everything covered. We're not going to be able to get all the hidden challenges, spoken for. But if we can kind of view it through those 5 lenses, we at least have a much better feel for, how we want to act, how we want to, kind of engage in that life that we're creating for ourselves.
Yes, man. I love the idea of, I call them emotional goals, where it's goals when you think about achieving them, you actually feel something.
Yeah.
For example, winning a Super Bowl, like, oh, that would be dope. And of course it doesn't have to be that grandiose, but I find so often we operate from like a North Star that isn't actually ours. It's based off of what other people think and what we believe we should be. Yeah. Versus actually taking that time to be like, what do I want? Do I want to have $1 million, or am I cool with 500,000? Am I setting arbitrary goals just to say that I'm setting goals, or is this something that I actually feel some conviction to move toward?
Man, it's spot on, and it's funny you bring the Super Bowl up, just because that's the goal of every player, right? But what you don't realize is that you get to that goal, you get to that mountaintop, and it is like joy that you have never experienced for about a day. And then you realize, dang, I gotta go try to climb this mountain again. Right? So it's like this crazy mix of joy, relief, but then it's like, dang, I gotta reset and I gotta try to do this again, because now I'm like the hunted. Right? So even in experiencing that's not something that you would ever think about, because you're just so focused on all of the good things that it brings, right? But again, there's always something brewing under the surface that you can't really account for, and the more clarity you have around who you want to be, throughout every area of your life, the more resilient you're going to be able to be, to face those challenges.
Yes. Now, irrational confidence. Another idea on your platform. So can you talk on your platform like you're a politician? So irrational confidence. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah. So it's kind of an oxymoron, right? So irrational confidence is really is really the mindset that has kind of fueled my journey, right? So to go from what I jokingly call a no-star recruit, to go to Hofstra, put up some pretty good numbers at Hofstra, get drafted in the 7th round. You start to, you have to understand the odds of the game that you're playing, right? So I knew as a 7th round pick, there was a 1 or 2% chance that I would even make a roster, right? So the irrational confidence in me was like, all right, I kind of feel bad for the other 98%, right? because if you don't believe in the goals that you set, right, and you can't position the goals that you set and really position yourself to go achieve those goals, that's really what irrational confidence is about. Because we kind of talked around this point, but the world is going to set these limitations and these perceptions of what you can achieve, right? And they're going to be based on a bunch of different factors. So me stepping into that situation as a 7th round pick, the world kind of put value around what it means to be a 7th round pick, right? But the world doesn't know me, and they can't put value around what I plan to bring to the table to make my goals and my dream become a reality. So you can't really account for that. Right. So that irrational confidence becomes the X factor that allows you to put yourself in position to achieve beyond limitation and beyond perceptions. And, I think each one of us that has achieved the goal that was, outside the box, or, has done something that, has been unexpected. I think that there's kind of this deep rooted confidence and this irrational confidence that says, all right, I see the odds, I understand the odds, I respect the odds, but I believe in me more.
Yeah. Now, when I first heard irrational confidence, that's not what I thought it was. I thought it was like more of the opposite. Like you're being confident about something you got no business being confident about. Mm-hmm. But then also someone may think about like, all right, you got this confidence, and how do you balance that against humility?
Yeah, I mean, I think humility is baked into it, right? Because it's first you really have to accept the first step is really accepting what the odds are, right? Because they're there for a reason. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to abide by those odds and those rules, but you've got to understand. And I think the humility comes into understanding that you are in a position where you may have to go above and beyond. You may have to, find different ways to create value. Your path might not be linear, right? It might not be the same as everyone else that's made it in this journey. So I think the humility is baked into this understanding that, one, I think, and this is kind of a sidebar. I think humility, sometimes it, gets weaponized against us, right? When they feel like you're getting a little too big for your britches, or they tell you to be humble in a way to like make you small. But ultimately, humility is about walking into any situation and understanding that there's a potential learning experience there, right? And I think from that standpoint, the humility is baked into the irrational confidence, because you're constantly seeking opportunities to learn and position yourself better so that you can go ahead and achieve your goal, even against, what the rational folks tell you is possible.
Oh man, I love this. And I'm gonna start using this at work. I mean, I'll give you credit for it. It's like, well, this has a 2% chance of happening, but I'm like, nah, I'm 98% confident it's gonna work. So I'm gonna start using that. And Marques, it's been awesome to have this conversation with you, and I'm so glad to see that you're out here sharing this message. I know you're speaking. I know that you have hands and feelers in organizations and ownership and different pieces. What do you want folks to know about most that you have going on today?
Yeah, I mean, it's well, first, I appreciate this conversation, man. It's not too often you get to have, real conversations like this. So I appreciate the platform. But yeah, I mean, I recently just launched a media platform that I'm calling the Separation Playbook, which takes a lot of the kind of the concepts and the methodology, and it distills it down into, consumable format, right? So there's online courses. We're going to be rolling out, workshops and trainings, live and virtual. There's going to be like some digital tools and strategies there. So anyone that is looking to create separation, in their career path and in their life, we're hopefully building out a destination that you can come and get some actionable tools and strategies to get you on your way.
And this is also where you can come to build that irrational confidence, right?
Absolutely.
Marques, thanks so much.
I appreciate you, man.